Hey, my name's Rach, and I'm an audio engineer and content creator in Nashville. Pre-built cables can be pretty expensive, and you can save a lot of money in your setup if you can build and repair your own cables. To start, let's gather all of the materials that we need. You'll need a male and female XLR connector. I highly recommend that you use these Heatshrink connectors. It's what we use at the studio that I work at. You'll need balanced microphone cable cut to the length that you need, heat shrink and a lighter if you don't have a heat gun, wire strippers, 60/40 solder, which I highly recommend over lead-free solder, and a soldering iron. I use a Weller soldering iron, but I'll link in the description a bunch of other beginner-friendly soldering irons and all the tools that I use. Let's look at the different parts of an XLR connector so that we can understand how it fits together. There's the housing, the insert, the chuck, and the bushing, or the boot. The insert has solder terminals that are shaped like little cups that will prep with some solder before inserting the wire. The housing has slots that the insert and the chuck slide into before you screw the bushing on. Okay, let's prep our cable. I always measure about the length of my pinky fingernail, and I score the outer jacket with my wire strips to remove it. You can also use a razor blade for this too. Be very careful not to damage any of the wires underneath. Once you strip the outer jacket, you'll see two insulated wires surrounded by copper. It'll either be braided or in this case, it's stranded. This copper is going to be our shield, so let's combine it and twist it together. Next, we'll strip the insulated wires about 1 centimeter back. You'll see that the wire strippers have numbers on it that correspond to certain gauges of wire. Try to match that up. Be very careful again not to damage any wire underneath the insulation. Go very slowly, it might take some practice. I like to give those wires a little twist at the end after stripping them so it stays together. Next, cut a small piece of heat shrink and slide it over the cable. You can either use a heat gun or a lighter to shrink it to the cable. Just be careful not to burn the heat shrink. Next, we're going to tin the wires, which will help us later when we start to attach it to the insert. Using your soldering iron, place it on the wire for about 4 seconds and begin to feed solder onto the wire. On the copper, I recommend flowing solder throughout its entire length. Okay, before we do anything with the XLR, this is the part that I always forget. Let's put the bushing or the boot onto the cable before we do absolutely anything, because if you forget, you will have to start over. Here is the female XLR insert. We're going to fill the solder terminals the same way we prepped our cable. Put enough solder so that you can see it flowing in the cup. Okay, the moment you've been waiting for, let's solder the cable to the connector. Here's a reminder to make sure that you have that bushing on first. Let's get started. Here is the pinout for our female XLR. What the pins correspond to will be the same for both male and female connectors. It's just the placement that's different. Pin 1 is going to be our ground, pin 2 will be our positive signal, which will be the red wire, and pin 3 will be our negative signal, which will be our clear wire. I like to start with the pin furthest from my soldering hand. Place your tinned wire on top of the prepped solder terminal and heat it up with your iron until you see the solder start to flow. Take your iron off and hold the wire in place until you see that it's hardened. It'll probably take a few seconds. Repeat with all of the pins. Put the chuck on, line it up with the insert, and then you're ready to put it into the housing and screw on the bushing. Here's the other side of our cable, which will be a male XLR. The process is nearly the same, except for the pinout. Be sure to know which is which. And be sure to put that bushing on first, because this side can be a little bit less forgiving. Now you know how to build and repair your own XLR cables at home. I've linked in the description all of the tools and materials that I recommend for basic electronics work. Let me know what kind of videos you guys want to see next. You know the deal. Like, comment, subscribe. Thanks.